let's do a roll call. Debbie?
Here.
David? Here. Mark? Here. And Andy is, the chair is here. We recognize Medina and, Adina and Lisa are absent, and we do have a quorum. First order of business, there is a revised agenda. I believe we all have that. So we'll go to that. And also Lisa is our board secretary. And we do not have Lisa tonight, so I'd like to call for a volunteer. Mark is vice chair, which excuses him from that duty. And so, among Shannon, do you want to give a brief?
Yes, I would not need anyone to do the in-depth minutes, but I do really just who made the motion, who made the second, note the times, things like that. You don't have to fill in every blank, but just so I have that backup for motions and seconds.
All right.
You're gonna go. You said it. You said it first.
David?
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Okay, moving on, let's do the pledge of allegiance.
Thank you.
Yes, David.
Sorry, Dave, I'm taking care of it for you, but.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now we will recite the mission statement. The mission of the Medina County Board of Developmental Disabilities is to promote and empower individuals with developmental disabilities to live, learn, work, and socialize as citizens in the community. Thank you. We have a couple of recognitions this evening. Stacy?
Yes, I will give the first one, and it is for a retirement. I will read the proclamation. This is for Thomas Core, whereas the Medina County Board of Developmental Disabilities knows our staff are the foundation of our system and are critical to our daily mission of helping people with developmental differences lead independent, safe, and healthy lives. And we recognize the powerful impact and vital role staff have on the long-term successes of individuals with developmental differences and their families. Whereas Tom Core, having begun his employment at MCBDD on January 3rd, 1994, as an ADP instructor, then as a program supervisor, and eventually as a service and support administrator, has proven through his years of service to be a compassionate and caring public servant, at all times committed to the Medina County Board of DD, its mission, and our community. Whereas during his employment, Tom has shown his dedication and reliability to the individuals and families he has worked with throughout his 31-year career. He has spent his career working with both adults and transition-age students with a focus on helping those he supported to live, learn, and be included in their communities. Tom has always been someone who relished challenging situations and enjoyed helping individuals and teams reach solutions and find success. He has been an asset to his peers, always willing to help in a time of need and serving in a mentor role to many new staff during his time in the SSA department. Whereas Tom has always enjoyed getting to know his colleagues and those he serves, sharing his love of gardening and the Pittsburgh Steelers, his positive attitude and warm personality will be missed by all those he has come in contact with during his career. We are honored to recognize your efforts and appreciate all you have done with and for people with developmental differences in Medina County. Therefore, the Medina County Board of Developmental Disabilities formally expresses its sincere gratitude and appreciation for your contributions and congratulates you on the occasion of your retirement. We wish you all the best and continued success. He is not present. His last day this Friday. It's Friday. It's last week, Friday, yeah.
Okay, the next one we have, I'm saddened to say, is the proclamation of retirement in service of Wayne T. Carroll.
Whereas the Medina County Board of Developmental Disabilities know our board members are vital to our mission of helping people with developmental disability differences and lead independent, safe, and healthy lives, and have a powerful impact on the long-term success of individuals with developmental differences and their families. Whereas Wayne Carroll has dedicated many years of service as a board member for the Medina County Board of Developmental Disabilities and has demonstrated leadership, commitment, and an unwavering dedication to the mission and vision of the agency. Whereas Wayne served 3 consecutive terms from 1997 to 2008, taking a brief break and serving additional terms from 2017 to 2024, playing a vital role in shaping the direction of the MCBDD with thoughtful decisions and insights. During his tenure, Wayne held the position of board president, vice president, and secretary, where his leadership was instrumental in achieving the goals of the agency and fostering an environment of collaboration among peers. Whereas Wayne contributed significantly to the advancement of the organization throughout his membership on key committees, including donated funds and ethics, further exemplifying his commitment to ensuring the highest standards of integrity and financial stewardship. We are honored to recognize your efforts and appreciate all you have done with and for people with developmental differences in Medina County. Now therefore be it resolved, the Medina County Board of Developmental Disabilities does hereby recognize and honor Wayne Carroll for his outstanding service, leadership, and dedication to the success of the Medina County Board of DD and the community it serves. His impact will be felt for many, many years to come. Be it further resolved that we extend our heartfelt gratitude and best wishes to Wayne Carroll as he enters this next chapter of his life, knowing that his legacy will continue to inspire all who had privilege of working alongside him. Wayne.
Could have brought Johnson to the camera.
Oh, that's nice.
Okay, next on the agenda, the approval of the minutes. Wayne, did you have anything to say, by the way?
You know, I think I'll wait until, the forum.
Okay. All right, next on the agenda, the approval of the minutes. First, we have approval of minutes from the nominating committee meeting on January 27, 2025. And I think we had those in our packet. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
David, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mark. Okay. Any questions, comments, corrections to the minutes?
No.
Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Next will be the approval of the minutes of the annual organizational meeting, which has been revised. I think we all have copies of that, of January 27th, 2025. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Debbie? Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Mark? Okay, motion and a second. Any comments, questions, corrections?
None.
Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, so moved. And finally, the approval of minutes from the regular board meeting of January 27, 2025. We have a copy of those. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Mark, and do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Kelly. Okay, any comments, questions, corrections? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? So moved. Okay, next on the agenda, the presentations.
Yes, you have a couple of presentations here for you. I've shared with you is our annual report. For those board members that are new, we do one of these every year. We can do recap, highlights. You'll see on here it's some of the highlights of accomplishments, and then the second page is a nice graphic that really talks about some of the statistics, some of the numbers. You will see that in 2024, we served 1,532 people who were eligible for services. That is an 18% increase from 2020. So there's this really healthy, steady growth of people eligible for services. And then we break it down with children. We had, in 2024, we had 799 children, which we count from birth to the age of 22. And we served 733 adults, anyone aged over 22. And again, that's a 16 and 21% respectively increase from 2020. And as we said before, that this is a trend that it just continues. It will continue to grow. The need is there. We had 349 providers we work with to provide the needed services for people. There are 89 agencies last year that worked in our county and 260 independent providers. So we have a very healthy provider network here. 423 people used or visited the mobile changing unit in community events. We talked about that, but again, I think it's really important to highlight that. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback, and it continues to grow.
Stacy,
Yeah.
is there any way we can label that a little better? Because I saw it at the ice festival.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, maybe there's a small sign next to it that I didn't go up to, but it doesn't really have our logo or anything that I could see. Is that something that we can give them to do when they're here in town? Patty? Is that-
There is a fairly substantial A-frame sign that they're supposed to put out. I've seen it out at all the events that they put out at the entrance to it. So I'll check with them and see if maybe weather wasn't.
Well, it could be. I mean, they were sitting there, they were there. I didn't see anybody around, but it was raining too, so but it just,
And then we have a handout that they have as well that they're using.
okay.
Yeah.
It just, that A-frame would have been on the courthouse side, and you wouldn't have seen it from the sculpture side, so you wouldn't have known.
I can check with them.
But yeah, just if you would, please.
Yeah. It just, we've had a lot of success, a lot of positive from that. So, and we're gonna continue, obviously, to do that. That's just, and as I've always said, I think it's a game changer for so many people to come to these public events and have that opportunity, need, facility available to folks. You'll see.
Just a
Yes.
quick question, 349 providers, is that up or down from previous years, or I'm kind of curious on the trend there, or?
It's
It's gotta be up a little
Yeah.
bit, yeah.
it over the last year, I think even
Yeah.
over, I want to say it was like 289 maybe.
Okay.
So for some reason that rings a bell in my head.
I know we had a couple new providers that have kind of expanded in here, so that's
Yeah,
that's
that's
good.
good.
And I do believe that rate increase, I mean, all I'm hearing, from providers across the state is that has had a positive impact. It's helped people, keep people,
Yeah,
and, the rate of pay is, higher, so they're
Yeah.
getting more applicants.
that's good.
That's good.
It's still, don't get me wrong, it's still a crisis, it's still, but it did help,
Yeah.
and so that's the important.
Well, we probably have more parents that are.
That's what I was just
You can be
asking.
a parent to
That's what I was just
be
gonna.
a
An
provider
independent
also.
provider, yes.
Independent provider,
You
as long
can
as you
be.
meet the qualifications.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so we've probably got more parents.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the percentage would be, but.
Yeah.
But that would be an interesting data point, is are independent providers up that are non-family? Because that's what we really want to recruit and bring them into this field versus just have families who are approved for a waiver and they go through the process in order to, you know, be compensated for taking care of their loved one.
I just don't know that we have the knowledge or the data to know if a provider is a parent or not. We know in certain instances when an SSA is working with a family in
Yeah.
that situation, but there's no data point on the provider record to indicate that they're a parent.
Yeah,
You know, and so you know, and last names could be different, so I don't know that we would be able to capture that information.
would we be able to scrub ISPs for something like that in order to get it? I mean, because all the providers are listed on the
We
ISPs.
should be able to do something to that effect.
I think it would just be an interesting data point to know how successful we are in terms of really, you know, the great efforts that are going on at the Career Center and the mingles that you're hosting. Are we successful and will we be successful to bring on providers? Because obviously the needs keep going up, and up. So it might just eventually be an interesting data point.
Context with 16%, 21%.
Yeah.
Is the providers up at a similar percentage or half as
Yeah.
much or?
Yeah, we'll dig into that. see
Yeah.
what we can
I think
come
we're
up with.
looking forward to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And the number of people served, is that the 1532? That's an increase. Do you know what you're attributing that increase to specifically? Is it because of outreach and you're finding more people in the community in the county that need the services? Or are people moving to the county because they hear that it's a good county to live in for these services?
I would say that it's more people coming into the county.
Okay.
One of the trends that we see across the state, and same here, is that there is an increase in early intervention, so that 0 to the age of 3, where these children have some developmental disability, there's been a huge increase. And part of that too is with early intervention, they've added some areas of eligibility for the little ones. But this is a trend that we just keep seeing. And you know, Medina, we're really fortunate in Medina. We're very fortunate because we have a community that supports us with tax levies. We've got great providers here, so we're pretty fortunate.
And do we have a number on the total people living with developmental disabilities in the county, whether they receive any services from us or not? Do we have a number?
We don't.
Okay.
We really only have the folks that we are eligible. So we wouldn't necessarily know if someone, and there are people out there that have a disability that don't need us, and so we have a way of knowing.
Okay.
Good question.
Very good questions. Any others? Okay.
And I'll add to this, so what I do with this is, you know, every year I go out throughout the year and I go to council, township, trustee meetings, and this is one of the pieces of information that I can use so getting out into the community, so we're sharing this information.
Did you guys make this in-house? Do you
Yes, yep.
This is good.
Yeah, it's well done.
Yeah.
It's very well done. It's very colorful. It's appealing visually. Yeah, I think it's great.
That's enough. You want to basically pass. If you would have seen us 2 or 3 years ago,
Nice card stuff.
Yeah.
See,
really had anything, she's really done a great job.
Yeah. And who was responsible for this?
Patty.
Patty,
Patty's our guru.
Oh, Patty. Good job, Patty. I'm about to do mine for FMC, and so yeah, I know how much work it takes. So you did a good job.
The other piece is our ARPA grant summary, and I will take this out also. Again, that was the last hurrah of ARPA funds, and these were funds that DOD, the State Department, secured, and they put some parameters. You've got the areas that they put the parameters on around how we could use those funds. We used, gosh, I think we're almost to the point we had 130,000, right? Is that correct? That we were granted?
Yeah, it's right there.
And so we almost got down to exact cent. So the 4 areas of supported connections, community experience, universal changing table, and accessible communities, so you can see the breakdown there. And we try to try to hit areas that we're not able to support necessarily with like $100 particularly. So we did the grant with the accessible transportation for people that are employed in the off hours, in the evenings or before 8 in the morning on the weekends, as well as people that use wheelchairs. And those are tough areas for folks to find non-medical transportation. So that's been great success. We're going to continue that with our own funds. Talk about some community experiences. Again, one of our focuses, how do we get people to participate in activities around the community? So we had a couple things here. We had the yoga recreation class. It was integrated. We also did the Tech Expo with the summit, which was huge. So we're going to continue doing that. Universal changing tables, I can't say enough about it. So we're going to continue that. It's been a great success. And the accessible communities, one of the examples of that is we had a person employed at a local business that needed the automatic door opening, and actually the cement and concrete going up to it so that it was accessible. So again, it's a win-win situation there. So we used the ARPA funds, and they had an impact on our community. So again, these are two pieces of material that I will be taking out when I go out and talk about all the great stuff we do. Any questions?
Do we need to fund these individually next year? Are these recurring expenses?
We will be using our funds, our tax, our levy dollars, yeah.
When will we be eligible to get this grant again, if ever?
It's done.
Oh, it's done
It's all
forever.
done.
It's all done.
That's the last of the ARPA. So it's,
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, moving on, old business. No old business to follow. Going on to new business.
the administration respectfully requests board approval for resolution 725, the excess property. MCBDD maintenance and or IT departments have inspected and evaluated these items and determined that these items are needed. This property will be sold through auction or other means specified by the Ohio Revised Code. And you have that list attached.
Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved.
David, and do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, okay, motion and a second. Do I have any questions, comments, concerns regarding this?
One thing I will add, and again for the new people, is that we are required, any piece of property that we have that is worth $500 or more, we have to track, and then we have to account for either disposal or go to auction. So we're just complying with that rule.
Bobby, the auction is Gov Deals, correct? Yeah, Gov Deals, you're familiar with that. Okay, motion and a second. No other questions or comments? We'll call the question. Debbie? Yea or nay?
Oh, pardon me, yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So moved. Next.
Okay, the administration respectfully requests board approval for resolution 825, the 2026 MCBDD agency calendar and the 2025 to 2026 windfall school calendar. The agency calendar and the windfall school calendar outline key dates for an MCBDD families and staff and coincides with the OEA/NEA and the ASME union contracts. Any modifications to the approved calendar shall be brought forward to the board for approval if necessary.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the calendars?
Motion to approve.
Okay, Debbie, and do I have a second?
Second.
Kelly? Okay, motion and a second. Any questions, comments, discussion regarding the calendar or specific parts of the calendar? Hearing none, call the question. Mark?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
And Debbie?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, so moved. All right. Moving on, superintendent's report.
Yeah, just a couple highlights from there. I want to point out, March is Developmental Disability Awareness Month. So you have a few engagements that you'll see coming up this coming month. Starts, I guess, what? Saturday. Down Syndrome Day on the 21st, 23rd is the St. Ambrose Health Fair in Brunswick, and then the 26th is the Brunswick Senior Expo, so we'll be there. The other thing I want to note is that we have our Standout Champions Award we began last year, and we will recognize during the month of March people that have contributed to services, supports, inclusion, that just, support people with developmental disabilities. So that will be coming. I noted earlier, but we'll note again that in January, our early intervention program had highest number of referrals since July of last year. So we're seeing that trend continue. It kind of leveled off, but another big spike, which is good.
Stacy, going forward, can we actually put what the number is? So like, say for example, if we had 15 referrals in a month, would we be able to share that? And then it says that we're working hard to support these families. I mean, do we have the ability to say next month, like, we were able to secure early intervention services for these families?
Anybody that's eligible and wants the service receives it.
Okay, it's
So
great to know.
It's part of what we do. And we employ all the therapists that actually go into the home or community site. So anybody that is eligible and wants the service receives it.
Receives it.
Yeah.
And when we say that that number is up, do we have an actual number associated with that?
We do. Let's see. You can see on our enrollee statistics on page 40, you can see our overall early intervention enrollment, and you can see the past 2 months prior. And these are people that have been found eligible and agreed to services, have accepted services.
So which number am I looking for in terms of an increase? Am I looking at the 35 or am I looking at the 27 to the 35? Is that what I'm looking at?
That early intervention enrollment. I guess I should step back. Those are the people that enrolled. They're talking about
The referrals, right?
referrals. So we
Yeah.
don't chart the referrals
Okay.
here, but we do have a early intervention report that does chart that we use with Family First.
Okay.
We can certainly send that out.
But I'm always thinking about what that pipeline looks like with the number of kids that are becoming eligible sooner and earlier, now with the earlier,
Yeah.
detecting it much earlier, so
Yeah.
just food for thought.
School age, what I want to point out is that we're still continuing, we have students going out to National Design Marts, which is another great opportunity for our children and students to get out to community and potential job opportunities, which is socializing and people seeing our students and evaluating. You've got a list of our trainings that we had this past month, as well as those coming up. Which again, consistently, we've got a lot of training going on, so it just kind of gives you a picture of some of the trainings that we've completed and coming up.
Stacy, do you know where the mingle will be this time?
I don't, where's it gonna be? Here?
And that's like, what, 10 to noon or something like that?
Yeah. And our provider support, our DSP spotlight, always a positive thing. Tabitha Kelly was recognized for the February DSP spotlight. She has been serving individuals for over 34 years. And has been working as an independent provider for the past 22 years. Was nominated by 2 other independent providers that said she always goes above and beyond. She continues to help other DSPs getting into the field with how to do the job and do it right. She's been a shoulder to lean on for parents of her clients who need help, and she always gives 110% of her effort to the individuals. They're like family to her. When asked what is your favorite part of being a direct support professional, Tabitha replied, seeing my people happy and being part of the lives of some of the most fabulous people I know. I absolutely love my job. So we want to say congratulations to Tabitha and thank her for her commitment and all her years of service. The other thing I want to recognize is the Action Club. The Medina Action Club received 2 Kiwanis International Awards. The first award was for a single service project award, providing Valentine's gifts to 75 residents of the Avenue at the Medina Care Rehabilitation Center last year. And the second award was for the Ohio District Distinguished Club Award. A special thank you to John Hartman for representing the Action Club at the Self Advocacy Night here at MCBDD. So that's a great club.
Question on operations.
Yes.
What are we doing to the main entrance offices? Is that, what off the right as you walk in? Off
Yes.
to the left? We knocking down walls or we,
It's still in process. We're just still working through the design.
okay,
One of the things that we're focusing on there too is accessibility and radius of wheelchairs and turnarounds. So some of that areas and some of those halls, particularly that first one, is just not compliant. So,
sorry.
yeah. Other questions? Lots of good stuff. Cap house, thank you. Carrie's going to talk about it, but just, you probably noticed it in the vouchers. We had a cap house that we collaborated with Summit Housing to purchase a house. It was at the end of last year, so we requested the funds, and so you're going to see the transfer, the flow of the dollars for that housing. But it will go towards the 2024 year budget. You'll see that. Okay, Carrie, fire it home.
All right, so we'll start with revenue. That's on page 27 of your board packet. Since we're at the start of the 2025 budget, I'll just briefly go over the report that goes in the board packet for the financials for the board members. For revenue, we detail all the revenue accounts that we have in all 4 funds that we maintain. There's footnotes at the bottom that kind of describe some of the accounts and some of the accounts where we deposit money into. I will always list out the donations received by month and what they were received for and where they get deposited for as far as our donated fund accounts. I typically list 3 months of expenditures or revenue on the report. We're at January, so obviously only 1 month is available. But as we get through, I will list 3 months so you can see consistently from month to month the revenue. A lot of our revenue sources, let's say taxes, we get those only twice a year. A lot of our other sources are federal grants. A lot of these other accounts we get quarterly, they're not monthly. So you will see that as a cycle that we go throughout the year. We have the year-to-date receipts that we would receive is a column, and then we show year-to-date from prior year, same month. So for this report will be January, this is what we received year-to-date through January, and then the column that shows what we received through January of last year. And then the difference between that, the increase or decrease compared to prior year. I always look at both expenditures as well as revenue just to make sure. Sometimes we have the timing changes on revenue or expenditure, so it may not be equal, but I always look at why do we not have necessarily the same amount that we got from previous years. They're usually typically known as to the reasons for increase or decreases. And usually it's the timing of it, especially with revenue. So you have that percentage, and then you have the percent of the budget that we actually received to date. So we monitor that as well. So overall for January, we received 1% of our revenue budget for the month of January. Specifically, for revenue for January, we did receive the fourth quarter 24 sales tax payment, around $6,800. We get that quarterly, and that is for the sales tax that goes towards capital projects for the school only. So we budget projects, we get usually, I think we're at about $29,000 a year total that we get in sales tax money. And then I work with Bobby and we work on capital projects for the school. This year, I think we're using it for, is it the bleachers? The bleachers this year that we're putting that money towards.
Are the bleachers going in the gym then?
Yeah,
The
we're
gymnasium?
replacing the bleachers because we've had some risk assessments that we get done on the school side or for the building in general. And they're old, outdated, they're trip hazards. And these will also be power bleachers, so where there's less, impact on staff that are opening and closing bleachers and stuff. And it's used for Special Olympics, it's used for in services, it's used for other people that use the gym. So we felt at this point that it was a good idea to replace those, the bleachers. Other revenue includes school lunch accounts, so the kiddos that aren't on free and reduced lunches pay for their lunches, and then our Gov Deals goes into this account when we have our Gov Deal auctions of things that we auction off at the end of disposing assets. Federal grants for January, that includes money from the National School Lunch Program. State grants for January include the state of Ohio. This is the second year, I think, it could be the third year, where the state is paying for those kiddos that are on reduced price lunch plans. The state is paying their reduced price fees for their lunches, so that was a whopping $1.60 for us in reimbursement. So that's listed under state grants. Under refunds, we did have provider return money that we gave for under the ARPA grant for the community experiences. We gave money in advance to agency providers to use to spend on those. If they didn't spend those dollars, then they returned it to us. So those refunds. So that wasn't a budgeted item because we didn't know that we had the ARPA funds or that there would be return of funds. So that's going to throw out the refund account budget for the entire year because it wasn't expected. So that's what's listed there. And then a donation, we had a $15 donation. There was, as some department files closet was going through it on the community support side, they came across $15 that was in an envelope and random. So brought to our office and we decided to put it in donated funds into the community supports donated fund account.
Can you back up to the grants federal? You said what went into that pot?
So for January, it was just, we got a National School Lunch Program payment, but also listed under the footnotes under number 4, grants federal lists what's included in that total budget. So it's Title 20 revenue, which includes, we get money to cover EI services. I think it's about $80,000. National School Lunch Program, which is just the National School Lunch for those on free and reduced lunches. And then Title VI is grants for the school. There's one grant that we get under Title VI. That's a federal grant for the school side.
Okay.
The state grants also include rental assistance program for individuals that are coming out of a facility, coming to live into the community. The state has a rental assistance program that they reimburse us for rent that's paid for an individual in those situations. Our capital assistance housing pass-through money will go through the state grant line because it is state funding and it's pass-through. So they will give us the money to pay the housing. So for Summit example, when she brought up the Summit housing contract, we have an expense side to pay through and pass through the money we get from the state because it has to flow through us to the housing boards in order for them to participate in that program. So we got the revenue for this project that was done, the expense is coming out of our last year's budget, but the revenue is coming, it came in February that we got from the state. So it's just kind of a pass through kind of. And then sometimes we get some other state grants. So there's a governor's security grant. There's our attorney general safety grant for the school. So there's other random grants that we may get from the state and that gets deposited into this account.
Okay. So you're just expecting to get 128,000 through the grants? the
Federal
federal
grants. Yep.
Okay.
Yes, correct. And like I said, 80,000 is Title 20. The school lunch
Which
program's
we're
about.
getting, that's pretty much a given that we're getting that 80,000? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, because we apply for whatever the necessary applications that we need to do for various grants.
Mhm.
If any, and I only budget for known.
Okay.
So if a grant comes up like the ARPA grant, like last year, I didn't know that we were gonna get the ARPA, like have the ARPA grant when I did the budget. So the budget dollars would be higher for revenue because we got money from an ARPA grant we didn't know existed.
Okay.
So we'll just be, our received amount will just be higher than what's budgeted because we didn't know it existed at the time.
So will they give you that 80,000 in installments? But
We'll
they just
get
haven't
that
started
80,000
getting
we'll get quarterly,
it
yeah.
quarterly? Okay, gotcha.
We have to submit billing quarterly to show proof of use of the
Oh,
dollars.
you have to
So we have
credit it.
reporting requirements that we do with all of these that we have to submit before the money comes to us.
Gotcha.
But some of them are monthly, like the school lunch program, we get
Mm-hmm.
that monthly. The Title 20, we get that quarterly.
Got it.
So that's what we have for revenue.
Anything else before moving on?
Page 28 in the packet is for the monthly expenditure report. Very similar to the revenue. I list the account numbers. I list the account descriptions for expenditures. I list the initial budget that was approved by the board in October. The budget change column will be for any, if I have appropriation changes or transfers that come through the board, those will show up here as well. And then the adjusted budget is just the initial budget, net the budget changes. You have the month of January listed again for expenditures. I will list 3 months of expenditures at that time, just for comparisons from month to month. The year-to-date budget will be the current budget month that we're in. So if it's 1 out of 12, it's going to be 1/12 of the budget. February will be 2/12 of the budget, that kind of thing for the year-to-date budget amount. Year-to-date expended is self-explanatory, and again, I compare to year-to-date prior year, so you have prior year January, this is what we paid out, and current year January, what we paid out, so you have that comparison. And that's what the increase and decrease is comparing. I have a column for the unspent budget, so it's the budget amount less what we've paid to date as to what's left over in the budget, and then the percent by each budget line item of what we have spent to date. There's footnotes on this as well to just kind of explain some of the different categories and areas. Just noting our initial, the 4 funds that we have, our local Medicaid match, we have quarterly payments plus a 5th invoice is in this account. Prior year carryover, there's a line at the bottom that has prior year carryover, and the amounts listed there are expenses that we pay in the current year that are prior year expenses. So they're expenses that are 24 expenses that we paid out in 25. So that's the amount total there. Salaries, I list the 3 pay months because there are 2 months out of the year that we have 3 pays in a month, and that makes it look like a higher monthly expenditure when those months, but I also review, and I'll point that out to you when I'm reviewing those financials. Transfers, we don't have any transfers budgeted for 25. And then our reserve account. The reserve accounts at the bottom are based on the Ohio Revised Code rule. And I'll describe that I'll talk about that a little bit more when I get to that part of the expenditures. For January, the dental payment, we had 2 months of payments, January and February, that we paid in January. For fees, we had our Q2 fiscal year 25 and state administrative fees. The state administrative fees we pay quarterly, and those are fees that we pay on the provider's waiver billing that we owe to the state. It is for them processing provider claims. We pay 1.25% of all waiver claims paid out to providers. So that is a quarterly amount that we pay, and it was a little over $90,000 that we paid out in January. Also in January, we had our liability insurance, our violence insurance, and our vehicle insurance annual renewal that was paid out. Our liability insurance went up 5%. That was an industry standard increase that was included. It wasn't for any specific purpose for our agency. Our violence insurance did not go up at all. There was no change there, and that was $345. And then the vehicle insurance also went up 5%. Again, it was based on industry standard increases that occurred. And that was a little over $10,000 for our vehicle insurance.
Did they get competitive quotes for you when they?
We go through the Ohio School Plan. They're specific. They have a consortium, so they go out and work with the various brokers that are out there to find out, the insurance plans.
Okay.
We've been pretty consistent with who we've been with.
Okay.
The other two insurance plans that we have that they don't renew until July, that's going to be our cyber insurance and our pollution insurance. So we do that in July. So this is just our annual liability insurance time when it renews. And our property insurance we do through the county. So that's paid through the county, and we do property insurance through that through Corsa.
Thank you.
I updated the account. Was always listed for travel. It was always called travel. It's kind of a morphed account. It's travel and training. So it's operating travel for those staff like EI and SSA that are out in the community working with families and individuals. And then it's also training. So it's if we have various trainings, and that also comes out of the same line account. So I just kind of added that descriptor to that. For January, we had about $4,900 in operating mileage, and we had about $5,400 in travel training costs. And most of that is due to the Ohio County Board Conference that occurred in December, which is attended by quite a few staff and board members. Contract services, we had about $94,000 of prior year expenses. So again, those were 2024 contract services that we paid in 2025. That is one of the bigger accounts where we have prior year expenses that usually happen all the way into April, May sometimes of the next year. Contract projects, 321,000 of that was prior year expenditures, mostly as a result of the CAP housing project that Stacy talked about, and that was a little over 299,000. And then we had 17,000 in DODD ARPA expenditures for the supported connections program that we paid out in January, and $4,400 in provider support programs paid out in January. Other expenses will tend to be higher at this early part of the year because those are for annual membership dues that come up at the beginning of every year. So that's most notably our Ohio Association of County Boards, which is about $49,000. We have opera in there, and we have some other professional dues that occur annually in January. So you'll see that most likely the first quarter. Equipment, we had about $1,500. There was some wall padding for the school. Medicaid match, we had our Q3 fiscal year 25 payment of $1.87 million. That is our local responsibility for those individuals that are on waivers. And we had 5 individuals in a DC, and we are responsible for the match for those individuals, and that was $38,000 paid out in January. Overall, the total prior year expenditures was $479,000, a little over $479,000, which was about 13% of the total of expenditures for January. The general reserve budget, these are budget numbers. This is not something where you will see an expense come out of. It is just a placeholder budget number. There is a general reserve and then a capital reserve, and those are both based on Ohio revised code limitations that they have. The general reserve is 40% of the limit is 40% of prior year expenditures. So for 2025, it would be 40% of what we spent out of our general fund only for 2024. So I budget a number during budgeting season as an estimate of what I think the 40% of prior year expenditures will be, and then I revisit the number once the books close for the calendar year to determine what the actual 40% is. So for when I looked at that number for 25, the actual number, the 40% was roughly $40,000 higher than what I budgeted for. So we're under the cap, and I'm not going to revise the appropriated number just for $40,000. Like, I'm fine. I don't need to be at that specific cap. I'm not concerned. Usually I might be over on my projection, so I will revise it down, and I do that through the county. I will just submit a transfer or a reduction in appropriation to match whatever the 40% is. I've done that the last 2 years. This is the first year that I was actually under, so I'm just gonna leave it at that, but I wanted to report to the board that I'm not changing that budgeted appropriation because we are within that maximum amount that we are allowed by law. The capital reserve is just 25% of all capital funds that we're allowed to keep in that account. The amount that's in the actual appropriated to the reserve and capital is less than, it was the amount we transferred at the very beginning when this law went into effect. The total in the whole entire capital fund has to be less than the 25%. So that's where we're at. The reserve amount isn't based on that 25%. It's the whole entire fund. So when we transferred the money to this account, we had agreed to say, okay, we're going to just spend the reserve down based on each year's capital project amount. So it's the original amount less every year's capital projects. Is basically how that's being managed. So it's just a appropriated number. Again, you won't see an expense there until I at some point may need to transfer funds, and then it'll just be a transfer of funds. So that is the expenditures for January.
Carrie,
Yes.
I don't know, this is the first time, certainly Kelly and Debbie have heard, maybe even Mark, that we've actually had a grant for housing.
Is that the cap?
That's-
That's the
Yeah,
cap.
can you explain that?
I was
I
gonna
don't
say,
know what you're.
why don't you give a quick rundown what that means for Summit and there's agencies that use it. Ken.
So the capital housing grant is through DODD, state funded dollars. And it's they have a process of purchasing home for individuals to live in. And you have to have a license, you have to be a housing provider to get that. And I want to say the percent is like 90% of the median cost for the area. Does that sound about right? So they purchase a house, it has to be identified like who's living in there, so we have to have individuals that are living there. The current house that we purchased, we had folks living in there and the owner was selling the house. So we spoke with Summit Housing, and they came out, took a look at it, and decided to purchase it. So those dollars, they purchase it, they put in the receipt, and we request those dollars, and we transfer it to them. Things that are attached to that is, it is a loan forgiveness, so each year it decreases. It's a 15-year time span, and they have to agree to that it is for people with developmental disabilities that are eligible within the county and keep it up to date. The nice thing also about that fund is there are renovation funds, and you won't see those go through because they will bill the state directly, but we have to approve it. The house needs a new roof. You know, they can apply for loans. We've had driveways replaced, we've had bathroom remodels, stuff like that. So again, that helps the housing provider to keep a network of houses available for folks to rent from, as well as keep them up. And they are obligated to do that for 15 years. After 15 years, that piece of property then is solely theirs. They have sole ownership of that property.
When you say theirs, Stacy, who do you mean?
The housing corporation.
The housing corporation. Now, this is not Summit who oversees it, right? The
They're
housing
called Summit Housing.
They are
It's
called
not
that, okay.
Summit County Board. Yeah, they're
It's
called
Summit
Summit
Housing.
Housing. Yeah.
Okay.
And the Summit Housing Corporation is in like 9 different counties, so they're all over the state.
And we have what, 4 in it? We have Summit,
Summit,
Creative Housing,
Creative Housing, and Metropolitan, Medina Metropolitan Housing.
is it one more of that?
Well, at least it's
Yeah,
not.
no, I just-
And
at
they,
least
and
it's
they,
not
they
one.
fill all the paperwork out and make the application, and they may or may not be successful.
So
if
they
they're
apply
succe-
for the money.
Yeah, they do a lot of the work, and then when the grant comes through, it comes to Carrie and Stacy, and then we go ahead and hold it and give it back to them with,
We have to approve it. We have to, we're the ones that we sign off and send it in, so we have to give it the blessing to the state. I don't think we've had anybody since I've been here turned down, so.
Is there a requirement for the individuals who live in the home to be in Medina County?
Yes, as
Okay,
Medina
good.
County, yeah, come to us as a Medina County resident.
And then in 15 years, they actually own the house, this,
The
the
corporation.
corporation house.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good deal. Huh?
It is. And if for some reason that they decide, the corporation decides that, they want to sell the house prior to the end of that 15 years, they are then responsible to reimburse the balance back to the state.
Okay.
Doesn't happen very often, but it has.
Mhm.
So those dollars are all accounted for.
So are we responsible for making sure that the houses are up to code and everything is, you know, copacetic in them through these 15 years that,
That's on the Housing Corporation. Now, with that said, our SSAs are going into these houses,
Okay.
because they're having meetings, they're checking on stuff. You know, there are times where somebody will say that, one of the individuals say, wow, I had this work order in and it hasn't been fixed yet, or stuff like that, and then the SSAs will intervene. But it is on the housing court to make sure that those houses are up to speed and kept up to, kept in good repair.
So
And
we're
how-
really a
and
pass
only-
through?
yeah, and only housing our individuals.
Right, it's
Yeah, there's-
strictly eligible individuals,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm. So it's really just a pass through for us.
Yeah.
It is.
Yes,
It
it
really is, yeah. It's a great opportunity. I mean, again, just another way of finding affordable housing for people. So the state is taking on a big cost, so they can keep the rent at a very reasonable price. We're required, with that, to have a master contract that kind of stipulates, all the legalities and stuff of that nature, so that there is a contract in place.
Do we have the ability, so I know that John Thomas keeps a list of
Mhm.
people who are looking for homes.
Yes.
Do we have the ability to encourage organizations like Summit to be more active in looking for solutions in Medina?
We do work with them, yes. One of the things that we balance carefully is, we don't want those houses sitting empty. They need to be people in there, because there is a revenue piece of having people in there, and then if they aren't, that then becomes a cost for the housing corporation.
And it's also competitive statewide. We may not get any next year. Well, in fact, last year we didn't get any, did we?
Well, we didn't apply for any last
didn't
year,
apply for
because we didn't have any situations where it warranted applying for it.
The state had money allocated for it, but we didn't have.
so we're not actively looking for these types of houses?
When we have individuals that are in need, then yes, we will work with the, we don't go out and look for the houses. That's why we have that corporation. We tell them what we look for. And they're looking at things that are accessible. They're not going to purchase a two-story, those days are long gone. They're looking for ranches, stuff of that nature. So,
It sounded like the current situation was a hardship case where
right,
individuals were already in the house.
right.
And the owner now was asking to relinquish the property.
Mm.
So maintaining the residence for these special needs individuals, this was an opportunity then to apply.
So that was my original question that I kind of circled back to. So we're working with this organization called Summit, if I understand
One
correctly.
of the organizations,
Okay.
yes.
And we know we have this list out there of people who
Yes.
are looking for homes.
Yeah.
Do we have the ability to work with Summit, who has our current contract, I think, to encourage them to want to apply to have more housing units
Yes.
in
Yes.
Medina? Do we have the ability to
We
really
do.
encourage them, to be partner with us even more in order to create affordable housing for our DD community. And I'm not saying that they're not, I'm just kind of throwing that out there. I don't know what the need is, I just know that there's a list.
We do.
Okay.
And actually, this house was because we reached out to them and said, hey, we've got this situation.
Great.
Is this a house that you would be willing to purchase and manage? So we do work with them quite a bit when we have these situations.
Okay.
We have two, 3 people that are looking, that are compatible together. You know, what can we do?
And this is considered affordable housing, so who determines the rent for the people that live in the house?
Part of that is with, within the contract itself. We try to make it, you know, I'm gonna say 30%,
Housing authority, like a lot
35%
of
of
that.
their income.
Oh, okay,
So, yeah,
okay,
we work with them to make sure that they aren't charging.
okay,
That's part of the deal.
okay.
Thank you.
All right, so any other questions on the expenditure report? We'll move on to the cash balance report. This is the monthly cash balance report updated for 2025. This compares our different fund totals to prior year at the same time. And we are at 35.7 million in all of our cash at the end of January. And then on page 30 is our monthly cash flow. So I will do, again, it's our cash balance by fund, and then it just shows the use of fund balance, and that's just basically what revenue we got in the month compared to what our expenditures, and whether or not we're using our part of our fund balance that we have, the 35 million that's on the previous page. So for January, we have $3.5 million in expenditures, and we only had 263,000 in revenue, so we used 3.3 million of our fund balance for the month of January. I'll remind that the year 2025, we did budget and project that we will be in deficit spending at the end of the year. That is projected and been accounted for. I normally have a graph at the bottom, but because it's only 1 month, the graph isn't really showing anything, so you'll see that on subsequent months reporting. And then also included in your packet on pages 31 to 37, this is the voucher report. It is a summary of all the January expenditures. I group it by vendor, and then I also group it by fund number. So we only had general fund expenditures in the month of January. We did not have any other fund expenditures. So typically when you're reviewing the board packet, when you receive that, from Shannon. It's just if you have any questions, I will ask every month if you have any questions regarding any of the items that are listed on the voucher report.
Any questions?
Nope.
So, resolution.
Yes. The administration accepted request for approval for resolution 925, the acceptance of financial statements for the month of January 2025.
Do I have a motion to approve? So moved. Mark, and do I have a second?
Second.
Kelly? Okay. Motion and a second. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none. Debbie?
Yes.
Okay, Kelly?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, so moved.
Okay, we have a rest of our reports. We have our enrollee stats. Theme of status quo. We also have our personnel control. We have an opening as an intervention specialist, and we have 2 SSAs openings. I'm in the process of interviewing. So we're in good shape. Oh, and also one secretary. Offer has been accepted. Gives you an idea. And then we have our performance outcomes. We will report on this quarterly. And these are, you'll see are by department. And there are just some additional areas outside of the strategic plan that departments are working on. You can see the various goals and areas, and so, like I said, we give you an update quarterly on progress with these performance outcomes. And then you have all the engagement over the last month that has been out and about in our community, advertisement, publications, all that good stuff. Any questions I can answer for you?
Questions? Hearing none. Okay. All right, that brings us to the forum. We allow the public a ability to speak, to address us. 5 minutes per speaker, and we allow 9 speakers only. Does anyone wish to address the board? And Wayne, you had some questions. And Stacy had addressed those, I understand, but you had a follow-up.
I do, but let me, if you don't mind, I'll make a brief statement about my tenure on the. I want to appreciate the superintendent and the management staff and the whole agency. It's I've always been really impressed with the expertise and the professionalism of the superintendent and the staff, and it's very easy to work with the agency, and I appreciate that, which is so important with an agency that works with the individuals that are the clientele of the board because of the nature of their disabilities and their the difficulties that they have. Having said that, I have another question, a follow-up on let me go back to the questions I had first. The individual services, individual services, no, it was the list of goals and objectives for the year, and a couple of them were dealing with the education department. And I asked, when I was reading through it, I sent a series of questions to the superintendent, and I asked, basically, not only is the agency looking at the answers to these, but are some of the IEPs reflect that information as well? And specifically the goal about reading intervention and the science of reading. And I guess my question is, we talk about best practices and pedagogy and those kind of things. My concern is there's a standard of the science of reading that the state specifies, and my concern is that due to the individualized nature of our students and the fact that the averages don't really apply to our clientele or our students. And I guess I want to know does the state allow for, or does the state encourage that individualization as opposed to a one-size-fits-all program with the science of reading? I was in education for 40 some years, and I saw lots of different research, and some of it was based on averages, and they did fine generally when they were talking about general education students, but when you're talking about special education students with all their different learning styles and their disabilities, and you take a kid just with a auditory learning or auditory processing issue, and that changes their whole style of learning, and it changes how you teach them to read. And I just want to make sure that we're not using a one-size-fits-all program with IEPs, especially with our students.
I'm gonna actually ask Tracy, to address that, because he's got a lot of good stuff to talk about with that.
Right, that's not my level. Yeah, the science of reading, I had to go through the administrative piece and see what it was all about before I even asked about it. Really, it's a toolbox. It shows where teachers need to move depending on what the area of intervention is. It's not the only toolbox. It's not cookie cutter. The state just wants to use research-based instruction interventions, and I gotta be honest, I want my staff to be the best and be the most knowledgeable. I'll fight for that because mediocre is not okay for our kids. It's not who I am. So this is top-notch stuff, but it's not the one who does all. And we know that with our kids, and I understand what's being said is our kids learn different ways, and it is varied by each kid immensely. So we want to make sure that our staff has all the tools they need to make sure there's growth and that they can meet those IEP goals using the tools. So it's just a toolbox. We have a great curriculum that actually test them, and it goes to their level where they're at, so it meets the student where they're at, and then it gives a plan on where we can get them. And again, we go forward and backwards with our children, but at least we have a goal in sight and we keep working towards that goal. So science reading is about tools and about if a kid isn't able to do this, here's the tool to use, because this is what they don't understand, like comprehension, that, what is the vocabulary, sight words, is it cute, what is it? And it tells you exactly methods, not just one method, but several different methods to teach that skill.
Tracy?
Yep.
Is that also, just as you just explained it to us, is that also to the parents? They're aware of how we're trying to set up the program based on the given tested level of the individual we're talking to?
That happens at the IEP meeting. It also happens when you do report cards and they put notes in and stuff. Our teachers do a fabulous job of communicating with parents every day of what they're doing. We use the Remind app, which is really nice because it just goes back and forth and parents can let us know what's going on. But that's a constant conversation with our staff on here's what we're doing, here's where they're learning, here are achievements, and here's what we're working on.
I know there's some education with parents to help them understand the IEP process for the LEAs.
Yeah.
Is that being addressed with some of that training for parents? So that we have a lot more kids that are in LEAs than are in our program. And I guess I'm concerned that parents be exposed to all the foibles of IEPs.
Yeah, a lot of times it has to do with our home districts. They really inform the parents. We're just working for our district, so that's their responsibility. Now, we do support it 100%, and we communicate with our districts, but we are very lucky in Medina County. Our districts tell a lot to our parents. Everyone has little niches and needs, but they're very good. So far, I've had a really good impression with our special ed directors and getting information to parents. What do they need? What do you need? Just last week was like, we need a device, and they got the device in 2 days. I mean, they just our kids need that. They're very supportive of that. And that's all districts. It's been really good. And we're going to keep pushing that relationship and making sure we serve our Medina County kids the best we can. But they are all very good.
Anything else? Anything else from the board? Patty, can you stick around? I need help on something. All right.
Chairman,
Yes.
was some of the programs that talked about being cut. I know that you have a legislative meeting coming up.
Yes.
And at the speed they happen, I mean, it could happen between now and the next board meeting. I mean, we have some action plans on worst case scenarios that we can cover and go about our business. Excuse me.
You know, I'll say in general, yes. Just don't know.
Yeah.
I think, you know, this meeting coming up next Monday is with our local folks. And so I think that's really critical about how they're going to respond if there are cuts. One of the bonuses is that Senator Robichaud is our area rep, and he chairs the Medicaid committee. So he is very knowledgeable and also big, you know, he's a big proponent of, he sees our value. So yeah, we have those talks. The other thing that is very helpful is our Ohio Association of County Boards. You know, we're constantly through OACB working with our legislators, both state and federal. So we're actively, we as the global team working to stay on top of that, and that's gonna happen.
Now, I assume that I read the OSBA letter. I assume all board members get that.
Yeah, it's good
Okay.
information,
Yeah,
yeah.
it is good
It's very good
information,
information,
where it's coming from or where
yeah,
they think it's going. And-
yeah.
Okay.
And ARC has been very active
ARC
as
has
well,
been
encouraging
very active.
everybody to reach out and.
Yeah, it's important to let our legislators know as their constituents, what we need and expect out of them.
Well, and that's where I think our program with Patty's kind of spearheading, getting the message out, is really, really important.
Yeah.
I mean, they gotta know what the results are they're getting for their tax dollars, if you will. And where we get our money from too. If Medicaid's cut because they decided it, you know, that's devastating to us.
Big deal.
Yeah.
So, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? None. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Debbie, second?
Second.
Okay, I'll second it. All in
I think
favor, say
she,
aye.
and then
So moved.
I had